Hi, you're on Pablo Spot. I'm George. Welcome to this new series on refactoring Terraform modules. And today, I will be showing you how to handle simple and complex output in Terraform modules. And so if this series and the content of this channel lines up with your interests, hit the subscribe button and join me in this journey of learning by doing. So, let's start coding. Before I start with today's episode, I would like to make a shout out to Joey Jojo, whose question in here is our source of today's refactoring topic. On this episode right here, I touched on building Docker image using Terraform. I will be using this as a baseline on tackling Joey's question on handling output from a Terraform module. For a start, I'm going to create a new repository that will contain all the Terraform refactoring that I will be doing on this channel. I'm going to create another directory in here, which will hold all the changes that I'm going to make today. And now I'm going to launch VS Code from here. Without having to reinvent the entire code base for today, I'm going to use the code that I wrote on this episode on event-driven architecture. Now that I have my code here, let me open my main.tf inside the infrastructure directory and make some simple refactoring exercise on my code. On my Docker registry image resource, I'm going to replace the name of my resource. Please be careful when doing this. If you already have stood up infrastructure with your Terraform code, changing the name of the resource could result to your infrastructure being destroyed first before they are recreated, so you need to be mindful of this. I am using latest as the tag on my Docker image, which is not the best practice because the tag is static. We always want to have a quick and easy way to tie up changes to the application code base with the Docker image that is in ECR. And so to fix this, I will head to my data.tf and I will add an external resource data reference in here. This resource block will have a program property which will point to a shell script that I will be creating. To create the shell script, I will create a new directory inside the infrastructure directory and call it scripts. And then in here, I will create a new file called get.sha.sh. And then on this shell script, I will run a git command that will fetch the short SHA value. Now, let me head to my VS Code terminal and change the permission of this script to make it executable. And now, let me stage and commit my current changes. If I run this script by itself, it will print a JSON output that contains a value field, which in turn has the short SHA value. And now back to my VS Code Explorer and onto my data.tf. I will then update the program property and point this to the location of my shell script. And now let me head back to my main.tf and consume the data reference that I just set and replace the hard-coded latest tag. And now that I have infrastructure code to work with, let's head to the main event, which is how to handle simple and complex output in Terraform. For a start, note that any resources or data references declared inside your Terraform code can be set as output. As an example, I'm going to set an output variable that pulls all the Docker registry image resources from my code. So let me head to my VS Code Explorer and then open my outputs.tf. The next thing that I need to do is create my TerraGrant configuration file to verify this infrastructure. So I'm gonna go inside handling outputs directory. And because I'm setting my TerraGrant configuration file one level above the infrastructure directory, I need to update the context property on my Docker image resource as well as my git shell script. So on my main.tf, I will change the context property on my Docker registry image resource in here. And then I need to make a similar change inside my data.tf and then add infrastructure in the program path. And now I'm ready to stand up my infrastructure. So on my VS Code terminal, I will prepare this session with my AWS credentials using the AWS Vault tool. And now that I have AWS credentials set, let me export my Terraform workspace. And then cd to the directory where my TerraGrant configuration file is. And then start running terragrant apply. My terragrant apply was successful. Now, let's have a look at the output section on my console. The output that I get, which is represented by the images output variable, is an object representation of the resource that I'm trying to extract. The image resource has been set up with two elements, one for backend, which is right here, and another one for worker, which is right here. This maps to what is inside my output variable, which essentially means if I define more than 2 repositories and create Docker registry images for each, I end up with the same number of objects inside my output variable. So now let me head back to my VS Code Explorer and set up a simple output to this module. Let's say I want to get the name property of the worker Docker image. So my output's a TF. And let's say I also want to extract the whole image object for my worker Docker image. So I'm gonna add an output like this. And now if I head back to my VS Code terminal and then rerun terraform apply, the terraform apply is successful. Now I end up with 2 output objects, which is the images object that we saw earlier and a worker image object right here. And I also end up with 1 output that is a plain string reference, which is all the way down this output section. And that's the worker image name. So how would I consume this output? Let me head back to my VS Code Explorer. Inside the handling output directory, I'm going to create a main.tf. And then I'm going to create a module that will consume the Terraform code inside the infrastructure directory. And then I'm going to create a locals.tf file. Suppose what I need to do is pull out the ECR URI for each of my Docker image. I will need to declare a local parameter that I will use to interpolate the module output and extract only the information that I need. This will help me simplify the complex output, so it will look like this. To build this local parameter, I need it to be a map, and inside this map, I will look through each object inside the module output. I know that the object comes in key value pair, so I can look through this output variable like this. So what I'm doing here is looping through each element of the image's output and create a new key value pair where I keep the key and set the value to the name property of the Docker image registry resource. And now I have a local parameter that holds a simple object of the image name and the ECR URI. Let me create an outputs.tf and feed the result in here. And now I'm gonna head back to my VS Code terminal and rerun my terraform apply. My terraform apply is successful, and as you can see on my console, I now have a simplified output variable to work with. I can then start using this as either an input to another module or a reference that I can use on other resources. And that's all I have for today. Stay tuned as I continue to explore ways of refactoring infrastructure code in Terraform. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments below and send me some likes if you find this useful. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like the content on this channel. Until next time, keep learning, stay safe, and stay healthy.